The Redemption Inquiry by Michael Diamond. Part 3, Zeitgeists. Chapter 14, The Ideological Singularity. The scene is Barca Nona, the same Barcelona watering hole. Count Julius Evola, self-styled political philosopher and Dadaist, blabs his Fascist Manifesto before the crowd of riff-raff and swells. As the band of jazz all-stars breaks for liquid refreshment, our humble narrator, Hammett, takes exception to Evola's hornswoggle. The establishment erupts into an explosion of flying glass and cool cats in every direction. Hammett makes off with the final metaphor. Emma Goldman gives the nod to her companionable eunuch, Jamie. "Tell Mr. Hammett what we've dug up on the Barcelona affair." The poor chump spills. "Well, if you must know, it's kind of a snooze so far. 2 stories, actually. The first claims the city was named after Hannibal's father, the Carthaginian general Hamilcar Barca. End of story." Emma snorts. "Yes, Jamie, boring old camel hair parka." They guffaw in unison at their little private joke. Jamie stokes up again. "The other legend is a bit more keen. Seems Hercules was out chasing the Golden Fleece with Jason and his chums when ship number 9 runs aground. Where do you think they crash?" On cue, the 3 of us clink our glasses and belt out, "Barcelona." As soon as we down our hooch and reload, Jamie continues, "Yes, indeed. And when the hero of heroes finds his men, they've already made themselves quite at home in the seaside paradise they've discovered. They name it after their wrecked ship Barca Nona, the 9th boat, the name of this very gin joint in which we amuse ourselves tonight." Emma chimes in again. "So, according to old James George, we've got 12 laborious tasks ahead of us here. That is, if I read his book aright. Let's see now." And she ticks off the labors of Hercules on her fingertips. "First up, slay the Nemean lion. No problem. 2, we bump off the 9-headed Lernaean hydra. A bit trickier, but we'll persevere. 3, capture the golden hind of Artemis. Some fast footwork there. 4, nab the Erymanthian boar. Hard to figure out which of these boozers is Erymanthian. 5 is the charwoman's bit. Clean the Augean stables in a single day. A boatload of shite, as Jamie would say. 6, we rub out the Stymphalian birds. Nasty business, those gals. Number 7, bring back the Cretan bull. Probably a dim-witted creature. 8, round up the mares of Diomedes. By God, we are reduced to horse thieves. 9, for the boys, purloin the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. Ooh la la. A quick breath, and she resumes the count. Number 10, boost the cattle of the monster Geryon. Cattle rustlers, too. Next to last, number 11, grab the apples of the Hesperides. You seem quite fit. You'll have to do for Atlas and bump off Ladon. How about them apples? And last, but by no means least, capture and bring back Cerberus. Nice, doggy." Tickled at her own wit, Emma smiles a thin-lipped smile at her homme du jour. "I think that about covers it, eh, Jamie?" Jamie nods in lazy agreement. "Yes, we've got our work cut out for us, I'll say. Ought we look around this bistro and see if we can commence right here? The place is rife with monsters and other scary shite." They just crack each other up. I'm okay with being a third wheel and all. I need a little room to act fast if need be, times being what they are. A terrific up-tempo version of T for Two has us tapping our toes. Meanwhile, back at the science table, Heisenberg and Bohr are not yet convinced of Gödel's particular genius. It's all they can do to cover for their oddball pal Wolfie. Einstein inexplicably cottons to this strange young man. When Gödel joins him some years later at the Institute for Advanced Study, he escorts Herr Warum to a citizenship hearing in Jersey. On the way to the judge's chambers, Gödel reveals to Einstein that while prepping for the hearing, he stumbled upon a disturbing inconsistency in the U.S. Constitution, an inconsistency that might lead willy-nilly to fascist dictatorship. The Fourth Reich, mein Gott! Einstein puts the kibosh on that one, says the judge won't look too kindly on a foreigner critiquing the U.S. Constitution. Wouldn't you know it, the judge at the citizenship hearing does, in fact, ask Gödel if he imagines something like the Nazi takeover of Germany might happen in the U.S. of A. Gödel launches into its crackpot constitutional spiel when Einstein makes like he's having a coughing fit and gives the judge a wink, to beg tolerance for the little misfit's wild imagination. The judge, another member of the tribe, Einstein's tribe, changes the topic and completes the hearing bim-bam-bop. No time to contemplate the U.S. government turning fascist. Imagine. Tajikistan, 1925. A band of Red Army regulars led by Major General Mikhail Stefanovich Topilsky pursues their foe deep into the rugged terrain of the Vanch Mountains. Believing the anti-Soviet White Russians to be cornered in a cave, Topilsky orders them to open fire into the breach in the rock. A wild, hairy creature bolts from the cave right into a shower of bullets, falls to the ground dead. A White Russian survivor tells his captors that they were attacked in the cave by a band of hairy ape men. On the spot examination by the troop's medic confirms the non-human characteristics of the creature. A latter-day Enkidu, not a temple courtesan in sight. Le cadavre qui boira le vin nouveau, bellows André Breton, cri de coeur to his fellow wildmen, artists, poets, philosophers, and anarchists, all jammed around the table at Barca Nona. As ice is collaged, her shredded lover, so may the unconscious employ us as her fingers in our work of assemblage. You, man-child Reagan, you must be the first to break ground in this exhumation. Breton, with syncopated flourish and bow, swinging to Georgie Gershwin's fascinating rhythm, hands Man Ray his prize fountain pen. The American expat plucks the instrument from the pincers of the French alienist and aims his laser beam eyes at the blank square of white linen stretched out upon the operating surface. The Queen of Montparnasse at his side, Man Ray stands shrouded in her scarf, Stiglitz style, and inscribes the first panel of the exquisite corpse, obscured from the view of others. The Galerie Pierre crew has popped in from Gay Paris, still intoxicated with their heady first success, the Grand Surrealist exhibition. Same year as the Exposition des Arts Décoratifs, the launching pad for Art Deco, and death knell for not-so-new Art Nouveau. The corpse, a parlor trick ginned up that year in Paris, grabs center stage in all their reindeer games, the hip cat's latest foray into spontaneous divination. Artistic automatism, the ghost seduces the machine. The Barcelona seaside is the God's own playground for anarchists. Barcelona, the birthplace of the general strike of 1919. Mirabile dictu, the anarchists bequeath the nation an 8-hour workday that spreads like wildfire to workers everywhere. Unfortunately, a military coup follows 4 years later. In 1923, Spain installs an inept dictator, Miguel Primo de Rivera. The man is incapable of formulating any clear policy or mustering a shred of political acumen, and he can't pay for his ill-conceived grandiose public works program. The foolhardy dictator's mercurial style alienates his allies and foments chaos in Spain's diplomatic corps. Spanish fascism and a brutal civil war lurk in the wings. Catalonia is a hotbed for revolt. Barca Nona, its nerve center. Meanwhile, Einstein's young subcontinental protege, S.N. Bose, terminally bored, swivels his head from the physics of his beer-drinking companions to the metaphysics at the next table. Straight away, Bose's gaze lights upon the gaunt puss of a young aristocrat seated hard by. The spectral gent has turned his chair with its back to his own table companions. He sits and recites a Shakespearean sonnet in a deadpan voice, addressing the air, the monotonous crooning of a zombie lover, over the Sheik of Araby tickling the ivories in the background. The contrast is to die for. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course, untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Well done, sir. Bose digs it, most genuinely and spontaneously. An utterly ethereal reading of the bard. Striking. One might even say stark. Remarkable how your tone shifts the reader's focus from the poet's ardor for his beloved to the bald fact of death. The figure in the ground, by Jove! The way you linger over the words and phrases that emphasize loss and decay. The lover is neatly excised from the sonnet and replaced by the immortal words of the sonnet itself. Shakespeare might have read it just that way. Bose smirks. From his grave. He sticks out his hand. S.N. Bose. My friends call me Nat. The ghost poet stares at the Indian physicist, still as a stone. Finally, words burble from his barely parted lips. Yes, I see. Is that your nature? My friends, the few that I have, call me Ludwig, because that is my name, Ludwig Wittgenstein. The band shifts gears to the ever-wistful Somebody Loves Me. Philosopher grimaces at physicist. Bose pauses a moment to gather his thoughts, then lets fly a poetic arrow from his own quiver. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Your touch, stronger than wine. As the aura of your fine oils, your name is spilled out. Worlds say yes to you. Drag me after you, let's run. The king leads me to his chambers. We'll enjoy you, delight in you. We'll remember your touch, surpassing wine. Unswerving are your lovers. I am dark and lovely, Jerusalem's daughters, as Keda's tents or Solomon's tapestries. Don't stare at me. I'm darkened because the sun itself tans me. My brothers belittled me, made me the vineyard's keeper. My vineyard, my own, I've not kept. Hebrew poem from a Hindu, remarks the inscrutable Ludwig, face distorted in an ironic rictus, with some clever bits of translation. I rather like worlds instead of girls. A Hebrew pun with some punch. Yes, an actual Aryan from the land of Aryans who simply adores Hebrew poetry. Nat replies with a bemused smile. I prefer my lovers with blood running through their veins, the intoxication of the flesh. But then
I am a dark man from southern climes, neglecting my homeland for the sake of toiling in the vineyards of these brainy northern folk. My brothers here," he says with a nod toward his table, "are physicists and mathematicians. And yours?"
Wittgenstein grimaces again.
"These are not my brothers. They invite me to discourse upon the nature of language, but any attempt at real intellectual exchange immediately descends into bellicosity and farce. Look what nonsense they're engaged in."
Wittgenstein points with the bony finger of Jeremiah, prophesying the doom of a decadent empire. Bose gazes beyond his new friend to the crowd of eccentrics that lean over the adjacent table. They all beam in manic delight at having achieved the feat of folding their tablecloths down to an 8-by-8-inch square. Kiki, unofficial queen of Montparnasse, purrs in her boozy, seductress drawl to the other lovebirds at her table.
"Polly and Gallerina, dears, you take the next turn. It's crazy. Come now, you mustn't be wet blankets."
Although they've sailed to Barcelona together, the Elouard's marriage is on the shoals. Gala retrieved her suicidal hubby from Saigon last summer. Seems he isn't so copacetic about the ménage they had with his buddy Max Ernst. C'est la vie, c'est la guerre. The three of them are back in the saddle together at Barca Nona, but the tension is thick as foie gras. Strains of "Don't Bring Lulu" waft in from the bandstand. Breton, once in Gala's thrall as well, all but snarls as he barks daggers. "Yes, Paul, why don't you and your mole have a shot at it?" Manny and Kiki rejigger the tablecloth so that only the barest hint of their scrawl is visible to the next victims. The Elouards cloak themselves in Kiki's scarf as per ritual decorum. Young Dali, 10 years the junior of Madame Elouard, an unknown sybarite, dreams from the shadows of his future connubial felicity with her. She does not notice him that night, in spite of it being the year of his coming out in Barcelona. He may peep with impunity. Wittgenstein turns back to Bose and moans.
"You see what I'm dealing with. Odiousness and baseness. Human beings, on the average, are not worth much anything anywhere. But these so-called artists and anarchists are more good-for-nothing and irresponsible than I had any reason to suspect. I was mistaken when I thought we were grappling with the same problem, the impossibility of linguistic expression. Now I see it's simply the impossibility of decent human behavior."
A distant smile crosses Wittgenstein's face.
"You know, I was there in Zurich when Hugo Ball declaimed his Dada Manifesto. Very amusing. I especially liked the part where he says like this: Dada Johann Wolfgang Goethe, Dada Stendhal, Dada Dalai Lama, Buddha, Bible, and Nietzsche, Dada, 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 Da. Pause for effect. I memorized it. Very funny, very rhythmical, dispenses with all pretense of artistic or philosophical meaning. Great. But this surrealism scheisse is just pseudo-religion, if you ask me."
Bose humors the crabby philosopher.
"You think scientists and mathematicians are so different from your crowd of artists? A few of them, most notably Heisenberg and Schrödinger, and even my hero Einstein, dash around like wild men, making whoopee, just as chaotic as your anarchic artists. And many are every bit as naive and irresponsible when it comes to politics and philosophy, consistently inconsistent. Some are downright pre-moral children in their attitudes toward their fellow humans. Heisenberg, for example, talks about a youthful stint serving with the Freikorps, putting down the Bavarian Soviet Republic, as a game of cops and robbers. Think of it. 1,000 communists died in the street fighting. Some gain. The noble Spaniard Moncay, Paco, as we like to tease him, clearly leans fascist and doesn't really figure the social consequences for his non-Aryan colleagues. He fits in quite well in this country of his ancestors, I'm afraid. For my money, the real powder keg is Germany. The Treaty of Versailles hasn't worked out so well for them, and they are sorely displeased not to be every bit the colonial power as our dear Brits. I believe they are brewing something nasty. This will not end well for the European neighborhood.
Wittgenstein nods, sober as a judge.
I, for one, prefer socialism. Very humane. But we've got you beat at the artist table. You see that sinister-looking Italian over there with the dark rings under his eyes?
He points to a ghoulish figure of a man lurking in the shadows, a clown who affects a cape and a monocle. Bose shivers.
Who is he? The man looks like an evil clown. Say, did you catch the Phantom of the Opera at the cinema this year? Your fellow's the real thing. Lon Chaney has nothing on this character. A real Raksha. A monster in an age of cinematic monsters.
Wittgenstein snorts.
You have no idea. That's dead on. Julius Evola changed his name from Julio just to amplify the imperial. Claims to be a Dadaist. Spouts off about all kinds of mystical, magical thinking. It all boils down to an infantile wish for omnipotence. A darling of the Italian fascists.
Both men shudder. They couldn't have known at the time that the lunatic's ideas would be resurrected by a neo-fascist movement in the good old US of A in the next century, spearheaded by an insane internet media entrepreneur and soldier of fortune working at the behest of a reality TV dictator.
Interlude. Partitions. Parade of Technology 1925. The Leica 35mm camera and the Thompson submachine gun, both advertised to the general public. A well-armed hoi polloi, whether it be for an insurrection, a stick-up, or a fashion shoot. There's Lucky Lindy waving his diploma fresh from military flight school, ready to take to the air with the U.S. mail. The Victor Talking Machine Company rolls out its orthophonic Victrola on self-proclaimed Victor Day. Old Cal Coolidge earns a first for political broadcast on radio. His wildly successful presidential campaign is orchestrated by none other than the father of PR himself, Edward Bernays. Using Uncle Sigmund Freud's theories about the motivational value of lust and fear, he inspires Joseph Goebbels and a whole generation of women smokers. Speaking of propaganda, the newly founded USSR kickstarts TASS, a national telegraph agency. Charles Francis Jenkins jiggers up Radiovision, synchronized sound and picture transmitted 5 miles from Anacostia to D.C. for an audience of government bigwigs. 10 minutes of a miniature windmill. A bit of a snooze, but the content providers will rush to fill in the gap. Later that same fateful year, Londoner John Logie Baird renders the first television images in grayscale. Not to be outdone, whimsical Brit Grindell Matthews unveils his Luminophone, a contraption that turns light rays into the sounds emitted by a pipe organ. God's own Sunday sermon. On a more serious note, Robert Millikan discovers cosmic rays, Edward Hubble proves the existence of other galleries, and Richard Adolph Sigismondi receives a Nobel in chemistry for the secret of ruby-red glass. Nearly all of it ripe from the pages of L. Frank Baum, a seer, a woman suffragist, theosophist, and, well, sometime advocate of Native American genocide.
End of interlude.
The Spaniards, Picasso, Miro, and Dali, bolt down shots of aguardiente, Spanish firewater. Old Man Picabia and Breton, the overheated head shrinker, square off against Tristan Tzara, Marcel Duchamp, and Man Ray. Tzara drops in from Sweden to booze it up with his old pals, but Breton can't resist ribbing him as the clown prince of Dada. He pokes the bull again. Come on, old sad ass. You have to admit that surrealism has devoured and digested Dada. Sarah doesn't blink. The former Sammy Rosenstock just got word from the Romanian government that his application for a permanent name change is a done deal. He feels pretty good. Swedish girlfriend, new name and all. So he throws a left hook back at the frog shrink. You are so stuffed with your self-consumed self that you've no room to assimilate other people's ideas, and all you can do is regurgitate partially digested crap. Before Breton gets off another slug, the Gin Joint Quintet strikes up the band with a truly rambunctious version of that pan to corporate sociopathy, Oh Lady Be Good. But what musicians! A group of talented kids shanghaied from Gay Paris by none other than Josephine Baker. She came to town for a gig at the Grand Théâtre del Liceu, a really swell joint down the street. Barca Nona is the unofficial after-hours club. The musicians are hot. Sidney Bechet on soprano, Stefan Grappelli on fiddle, a gypsy kid named Django on guitar, and none other than visiting royalty, young Duke Ellington on piano. And the drummer, Sonny Greer's, got a set of skins that has everything, including the kitchen sink. They're wailing. Next thing you know, Herr Heisenberg sachets over to the artist's turf and hits up the Queen of Montparnasse for a dance. Man, they can cut the rug. Everybody Loves My Baby, a perfect jitterbug tune. Meanwhile, the Dadaists and the Surrealists find something they can finally square on. They agree to, quote, stand to a one in absolute opposition to the French and Spanish war against the Republic of the Riff, end quote. There's a break in the music, and Breton hoists himself upright again, a slight wobble to his warble. He clears his throat with a loud cough, raises a glass of Carajillo, and reads their credo to the crowd. On behalf of the Bureau of Surrealist Studies and our friends new and old, I would like to clearly articulate our position with respect to our brothers the Berbers of the Riff Republic. We Surrealists pronounce ourselves in favor of changing the imperialist war in its chronic and colonial form into a civil war. Thus, we place our energies at the disposal of the revolution and of the proletariat and its struggles, and define our attitude towards the colonial problem and hence towards the color question. Murmured approval and general hubbub. Interlude. Partitions. March of the Totalitarians, 1925. January 3, Benito Mussolini, a pivotal speech to the Italian Chamber of Deputies. He's crystal clear, says those street-fighting black shirts are his boys and dares any fool to try to remove him from office. Then he cinches the deal by promising law and order in 48 hours. January 16, Lenin is dead. The anarchist Trotsky yields to Stalin and resigns as chairman of the Russian Revolutionary Military Council. The cult of personality around Stalin has begun, and before the year's end, he is dear leader. February through April, the Kurds attempt to reinstate the caliphate. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk rises to new dictatorial heights and spares no treasure in annihilating the Kurds. March 12th, Sun Yat-sen's death lights the fuse of the powder keg that burns between Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek. July 18, Hitler meets Goebbels and publishes Mein Kampf Part 1. He spends 1925 preparing for the coming out of the Nazi Party the next year. The future of Zyklon B is secured as IG Farben arises from the merger of 6 chemical companies on Christmas Day. August 6, the KKK marches 40,000 strong down Pennsylvania Avenue to the U.S. Capitol. September 9, under the command of Marshal Henri-Philippe Pétain, a combined Franco-Spanish force moves against the Berbers of the Rif, earning Pétain his chops as a proto-fascist years before becoming the leader of Vichy France. His comrade in arms in the Rif War is none other than Colonel Francisco Franco, the future El Caudillo, dictator of fascist Spain. Franco leads the first wave of troops ashore at Al Hoceima in 1925. This landing in the heartland of Abd al-Krim's tribe, combined with the French invasion from the south, spells the beginning of the end for the short-lived Republic of the Rif. December 5, Abdul al-Baziz ibn Saud transforms the ancient family emirate into a nascent totalitarian state with the capture of Medina, forcing the pan-Arabist Sharif Ali to abdicate his throne.
End of interlude. Josephine Baker, within arm's reach at the table next to ours, turns to the Duke with her unbeatable sass.
Tell that Frenchman, if he has got a question about color, he should come over here and ask me. I tell him. I have walked into the palaces of kings and queens, and into the houses of presidents, and much more. But I could not walk into a hotel in America and get a cup of coffee, and that makes me mad. I wanted to get far away from those who believed in cruelty. So then I went to France, a land of true freedom, democracy, equality, and fraternity. I like Frenchmen very much, because even when they insult you, they do it so nicely.
She smiles at the Duke and waggles her cigarette holder at him for a light. The most sensational woman anyone ever saw, so says my pal Ernie Hemingway. I gotta hand it to her. Beauty and cojones. The Black Pearl gets the Croix de Guerre and Rosette de la Resistance for her work against the Nazis in the coming war. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Duke, well, he just smiles and nods and gives the lady a light, already mellow on the Mary Jane the Gypsy Kid scored for the band. Then I really get a chill down my spine. The Joker in the monocle and cape at the artist table stands up and makes like he's about to sing. I don't like his looks. Turns out I like his song even less. Fancies himself Baron Julius Caesar Andrea Evola. Death warmed over. A smooth talker, all right. The lies roll out of his mouth like Model Ts from a Ford factory. I can barely listen as he spews his honey-coated venom. The hypnotic gaze of a cobra about to swallow its prey whole. The creep stares around the room, catches each man's eye as he rises to speak.
Gentlemen, and you few ladies, we stand on the precipice of a greatness, soldiers in the war for the hearts and souls of humanity.
A faint rumbling as he cases the joint for reactions. He revs up his foul engine.
We believe that the best soldier is one who fights with a precise knowledge of his cause, and that ideas, even if they are only intimated or vaguely grasped, more than clearly formulated, are the essential reality in every genuinely important historical upheaval. Indeed, to exhume meaning from the graveyard of political and spiritual ideas requires a kind of necromancy for which we as artists and philosophers are uniquely prepared. What is a nation, after all, but the physical embodiment of its spiritual purpose? Neither linguistic nor ethnic nor territorial unity is considered sufficient to give the idea of nation its true content. A nation is a predestined cosmic unity. Such is the case in Spain. A unity, a destiny, an entity subsisting beyond every person, class, or community in which it is actualized.
Pure, unadulterated, grade A hornswoggle, but his uncanny sense of drama hypnotizes the unsuspecting listeners.
That is, it is about the spiritual and transcendent idea of the nation, as opposed to every community, of the right or left, and every mechanism. A true entity of its perfect truth, a living and sovereign reality. Spain tends, consequently, toward its own definite destination. In this regard, we must not only speak of a return in full to worldwide spiritual cooperation, but also of a universal mission of Spain, of a creation by the solar unity that it represents, of a new world.
You could have heard a pin drop. Einstein mutters to Pauli.
Sounds like that Scheisskopf Bergson and his pseudo-philosophical drivel about the nature of time. Nearly cost me my Nobel with his Meshuggah philosophy.
He stares lightning bolts at Evola, who continues pontificating metaphysical hogwash with the conviction of a brilliant madman.
Say no to the agnostic state, at most a police officer in a grand style, the night watchman state. Rather, let us have the state of all, total and totalitarian, justifying itself, the ideal and perpetual notion of Spain. Eradication of parties and of parliament followed naturally. A Spanish society infiltrated by warriors of a new order, fighting for traditional home and family values, the Catholic interpretation of life. If the Spanish national movement is really penetrated by them, anti-communists and anti-Bolsheviks, what follows is the whole of a new hierarchical Europe. Through the virility of violent action and eradication of weaker cultures, Spain mounts Hercules' pyre and achieves superhuman destiny.
Foam froths at the corners of his mouth. Unbelievable. What rock did this guy crawl out from under? My blood is boiling. This baron of bourgeois is turning the whole crowd into a bunch of saps. Before I know what I'm doing, I jump from my chair right into the little jerk's face. The words leap out of me. You, sir, are Yeats's rough beasts slouching towards Bethlehem. Nate Bowes and Luddy Wittgenstein give me the thumbs up. I'm on a roll. You don't fool me. I went to Catholic school, and you, sir, are no Christian. Your message is goddamn Gotterdammerung, you and your gang of power-mad goons. Just like the Pinkertons I used to work for until I realized that busting heads to bust unions was just plain wrong. Traditional home and family values like hell. Your whole mad cabal is going to blow up or enslave every quaint little hamlet that comes into the crosshairs of your so-called destiny. Jump on your own funeral pyre, that's your business. But drag the whole continent of Europe with you? You got another thing coming. I fought in the war. I know what that kind of misery looks like. It ain't pretty. You want to start another big one? Bring on the hounds of hell? That's just wrong, mister. Wrong as fascism. Right in front of that whole crowd of frozen stiffs, I draw back to cold-cock the little runt. Suddenly, the joint is under attack. Sounds like an army of Tommy guns firing slugs like nobody's business. Glass shattering everywhere. Somebody yells, "Anarchists!" and somebody else shouts, "Polizia!" Everybody is on their feet, hightailing it for the exits. The Duke, cool as a cucumber, cakewalks to the door, murmuring to anyone savvy enough to listen, "No, no, no, don't give your right name. This joint is walking." It's strange, real strange. I don't see any sidearms or uniforms. I hang back as the room empties. Every piece of glass in the whole damn place, including the giant fin de siècle plate glass mirror behind the bar, blown to smithereens. Weird. No bullet holes, no splintered furniture, not a body wounded. Can't figure it. Then I see him, the one they call Wolfie, sitting there still as a stone, his face every shade of purple. The Pauli effect. That's what I overheard the science boys call it. Every time Wolfgang Pauli skulks into a laboratory, they all know they have to skedaddle. Kaboom! Go the test tubes. This one's a real doozy. I'll bet he felt the same kind of crazy I did about Evola's rant. Really stoked his mojo. I sidle over to him, put my hand on his shoulder, and he just goes limp. I can practically feel the steam percolate out of him. I pat the little fellow on the back, take a look around the joint. What a mess, and nobody to pick up the tab. Hope the place is insured. Standing in the forecastle to get my bearings, something aftward catches my eye at the artist table. They must have finished their little parlor game, 'cause the tablecloth is blown out like a spinnaker instead of being folded into little squares, one for each genius to scribble on. Wolfie's coming around, so I secure his moorings and mosey over to the exquisite corpse, Andre Breton's cutesy name for their group art project. I kind of like to take a gander at it. I never was much of a connoisseur of fine art, but something about this piece grabs me. As I close in, it clobbers me right over the head. All chaos, violence, and wavy lines. I say to myself, dash, damn it, that's it. That awful vertigo I had looking into the Italian fascist Svengali eyes, straight into the abyss. Creeps under your skin and grabs your guts and doesn't let go. I can't make out anything definite as I study the cadaver. A weird abstract checkerboard. Then all of a sudden, a figure pops out at me, out of the chaos of the disjointed corpse. A damned horse. Demonic, tortured creature. Limbs going ways they shouldn't, straining against an invisible horror. So damned crazy, it's beautiful. Both eyes on the same side of the mad creature's head. A saber cleaves my soul in two. The next move is crystal clear. Dashiell Hammett is nobody's fool. Not leaving this one for the cleanup crew. No one the wiser. I nab the corpse, roll it under my arm, and sail out the door with Wolfie in tow.